In this video, we are going to continue from a previous lesson in building relationships that we were building in SQL Server. We're going to bring that data over from SQL Server into Power BI and build out our first model in SQL Server using the star schema, using the schematic model, building it out using the star schema. Very, very simple model. We're not going to do anything too complicated, too complicated, but we are going to build out our first model using the star schema in Power BI. But however, before we get started, you know what to do. Scan the QR code, join my community, my tribe, the community of CTOs. Join the community of CTOs, and what do you get? You get the free weekly newsletter. The newsletter is the key to all things Power of the BI. What do you get? You get access to the free jobs portal. It'll give you free access to the jobs portal that I curate myself personally using an app that I created using artificial intelligence, to where you'd be able to see all of the, not all, but you'll see a large number of Power BI jobs. It's not like going out to a wide range job portal where you've got to select from different jobs. No, this particular job portal, it is all Power BI, and I curated these jobs myself, so I know that it's all Power BI. In addition to, you get access to my free weekly webinar. My free weekly webinar is held every Thursday from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Look, we talk about all things Power BI. In addition to, you may want to know, what kind of computer should I use? What kind of desk should I use? What type of mouse should I get? What type of keyboard should I get? Do I need a keyboard with a laptop? I've got all of that information in my equipment list, in my Power BI equipment list, and it's available where? In my newsletter, in my free weekly newsletter. In addition to, you get access to my live events around the country. I do live Power BI events around the country. You'll get access to those events. I'll be totally transparent with you. Those events are not totally free, but the community gets a significant discount. In addition to, you are the first to know when those live events are taking place. What else do we have? We got live events, we got webinars, we got all inside the newsletter, the job portal. Hey, all of that and more you get inside our weekly newsletter for the members of our community, the community of CTOs. Listen, scan the QR code, follow the link, enter your email address, join the community of CTOs. Now, let's jump right into the video. So, welcome back. Off a little bit. Let me fix that. It's kind of wild doing that in the middle of class. But welcome back to the Power of the BI, to another lesson in the Power of the BI. In the last lesson, we talked about relationships in SQL Server and how tables are related to one another in SQL Server. And they're not just related to each other in SQL Server, they're related to one another in Power BI as well. And that's why we're here, is talking about Power BI. And the reason why we discuss that in SQL Server is because that's where the root of the basis, the root of the tables are going to be, the root of our data is, and understanding how those relationships are built inside of SQL Server. But in this lesson, we are going to take that one step further, and we're going to look at how those tables are actually brought into Power BI, and we're going to look at how those relationships are observed and built in Power BI, how those relationships are brought in from SQL Server to Power BI, and then we're going to look at how those relationships are built, managed, and maintained inside of Power BI. So, not to spend too much time talking in the wind, let's go right over into Power BI. And this is a new report that we have open, just file open, new report. I want to go back over to SQL Server just to get an idea of a reminder of what tables we were using, so we can use those same tables and you can compare against the SQL Server tables against how they're looking as tables inside of Power BI. So we looked at sales.sales store, basically all the sales. Well, we looked at the sales tables, and it was .store, .salesperson, and sales territory. .store.salesperson and .territory. So as we go back over to Power BI, the one phrase that we all use in Power BI is get data. How do you get data? Let's get data. How do we get data? And before we get into bringing that data in, I want to show you here that there are several sources that the data can come from, right? Text, CSV files, folders, XML, JSONs, IBM, MySQL databases, a lot of different places where it can come from. But our primary place that we are bringing the data in from here is primarily in SQL Server. So we're going to go to Get Data, and we're going to click on SQL Server. Now we need to know the server name. I think I said in the earlier video we were talking about in an earlier class we were talking about SQL. I think installing SQL Server and copying and pasting that name that was of your server. And the reason being is because you're going to always need it as we connect to the data. But even if you didn't copy and paste, you don't have the name saved somewhere, you can always come here and let's see. If we go to connect, now we can see if we this little like a little chord icon up here. If we just click that little chord icon, and now we see that the server name is here. All we're going to do is we are going to Control C, copy the server name. I'm going to cancel out before I do something crazy with it. Come back over to Power BI, and I'm going to paste the server name into the server name location. And at that point, just click OK. In many instances, as you are working on your projects on an actual job, you may need to know the database name. But if you're using Windows authentication, you probably don't. But you may need to know that database name too. And we do know that our database name, name of our database is AdventureWorks 2022, but we don't need it because we're using Windows authentication. So I'm going to come back over to here, and now I am going to connect, and it's going to connect to my SQL Server. And now we see that that database comes up. It's AdventureWorks 2022. We're going to go down, and we want to select the tables that we want out of that database. I think it was sales.salesperson, sales.salesTerritory, and there was one more, sales.store. Sales, and they're in alphabetical order, sales.store. So these are the same three tables that we were speaking of in our previous lesson as we were talking about relationships. And basically what we want to do, we're going to start out with good habits. And a good habit is to transform data. We're not going to actually transform the data right now, but when we bring data in, we want to click transform data. We're not necessarily going over the steps right now to transform data, but that's just where we want to go initially. I'm going to close and apply to make sure that data is still there. If we had transformed anything, if we had transforming is just making changes, if we had made any changes, we would have transformed the data in, we would have needed to close and apply. But this lesson is not necessarily on transforming data. This lesson is more so on the relationships. So here, this icon is this view right here, which is our report view. The second icon is our, it used to be called a data view. Now it's called a table view. So basically we can see all of our tables, and we'll be creating measures and things like that inside of this view. And then the third icon is our model view. And the model view is basically the relationship. You know, what type of relationships do the tables have? What type of model is it? So basically, this is our model. And as you remember before, as I said in the previous lesson, each one of these tables, the sales.store and the sales.territory, are all connected or linked together, or they have relationships on sales.salesperson, which means sales.salesperson. If I select this relationship link, I see that sales.salesperson is related by business entity ID, and here territory ID is related by, let's see, territory ID. There's a problem here. The problem is that territory ID does not equal salesperson ID. Business entity ID equals business entity ID. So it used to be, when Power BI first came out, was that these relationships didn't come in with automatic connections. Then Microsoft made it a little bit smarter, a little smarter, and they started creating connections, automatic connections, as you brought in your tables from SQL Server. But as we can see, if we have business entity ID here, we have business entity ID to territory ID, and we have business entity ID to salesperson ID. That is not the relationship. The relationship we're going to click delete properties, and we're going to correct these relationships. Business entity ID goes to business entity ID, so it's a one-to-one, and territory ID, we're going to, well, let's see, it looks like it's already there. I thought it said something else. So territory ID is correct, territory ID to territory ID, and we have business entity ID to business entity ID, which so sales store and sales territory are related by sales store and sales territory are related by their relationship with sales.salesperson. So the first thing we just want to remember is, when we bring our data in, when we get data, the first thing we want to do is we want to transform data, close and apply, come over to your model, over to your relationships, and make sure your relationships are correct. Because even though there's a smart connection, there's an automatic smart connection, doesn't mean that it's always going to be correct. Sounds kind of funny, but it doesn't mean it's always correct. As we saw here, in this particular instance, mine didn't come in as business entity ID to business entity ID. Mine came in as business entity ID to salesperson ID, and that would have thrown off the relationship, and all of the visuals and my pointing and clicking, they wouldn't have been connecting correctly. So just remember that is the first thing that we want to check. And this is how the relationships are set up inside of Power BI. We looked at relationships or how the relationships would be established in SQL Server, but this is where it's really important inside of Power BI, because we're building our reports in Power BI. We're not building our reports in SQL Server. Can you build reports in SQL Server? Yes. Data visualization, no. And Power BI is all about visualization. So we want to make sure that our connections are correct. So business entity ID to business entity ID, territory ID to territory ID. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's just giving us an idea in a nutshell of what the relationships look like. Now, are there times where there's some times where this rule is not going to always be? Yes, but 90% of the time, this is what it is. And by the time you get to a project to where it is a change in the rule as to what the connection should be, you'll be a lot more seasoned, you'll be a lot more experienced, and you'll probably be able to pick that up and understand why there was a change. But in this particular case, and in most cases, until you get to that seasoned veteran standpoint, you want to go with if there's whatever the ID is in one table, you want to see if that ID is in another table, and you want to make sure that you're connecting connecting those relationships appropriately. So with that said, that is our lesson on relationships in Power BI. Just understand that the relationships that are in SQL Server, we want those relationships in Power BI. It's not going to be that way 100% of the time, but I'm going to say 90% of the time, that's what we want to do until we understand that there may be a change or a difference. But if you do it this way, you will be able to perform on most projects. And, if you get stuck, get caught up, you know what to do. The team is always readily available and accessible to either help you, or point you, or direct you in the right direction, right? So again, thanks for joining in and visiting in on this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you win again in the next lesson.